to welcome everyone to this webinar to share additional information about the Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity as we enter our recruitment for the 2026 cohort. Reminder that this webinar will be recorded. For those who have already sent inquiries, we'll be recording the session. We'll share it with you afterwards. And so anyone who will not be able to attend the full session, know that it will be made available to you. The chat is disabled, as some of you have already noted, but our staff are able to see and answer all of your questions. So feel free to go ahead and begin sharing those questions right now throughout the presentation, and we will work to answer them with the team that we have assembled. So at this point, I just want to introduce my co-presenters here and thank everyone for joining. I will go in order and welcome first our program director, Salam Badada.
Thank you, Gwen. Hello, everyone. I'm Salam. I'm the program director of the Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity. I've been with the program since we started, and in my role, I oversee the fellowship experience and engagement for both current and senior fellows. Thank you for joining us today.
Welcome and thank you. We have senior fellows on the line, including Kate Doherty and Samia Kufo. Thank you for joining us. Kate, do you want to say a word of welcome? And then we'll give it to you, Sam.
Of course. Thank you all so much for joining. I was part of the class of 2021. Sammy, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, my name is Sammy, and I was part of the 2024 cohort. And trust me, you'd really learn a lot from this webinar. So stay tuned.
Thank you both. And we have a couple of our staff members on the line. We have Beth Meekum and Olivia Jefferson Show. Now I want to go ahead and say hi and welcome.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm the communications lead here at Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity, and we'll be working hard to answer your questions in the chat, and looking forward to hearing your questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Olivia Jefferson Shao. I'm the current fellows lead for the Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity. Many of you may have seen my name in the signature line of the emails, so I facilitate the inbox for our program, as well as the current fellow year, many aspects of it from recruitment all the way to graduation. Looking forward to hearing your questions as well.
All right, great. Olivia, would you like to bring up the presentation and we'll get started? I was smiling so big at the beginning because Olivia Jefferson Shao has a new name, and I was reveling in the joy of her recent wedding. We give her our congratulations. All right, so to reiterate, the webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to the website. As I mentioned, for those who might have just joined, the chat is disabled, but we are ready and able to entertain all the questions that come through. In the chat, we'll also leave plenty of time at the end to also have lots of discussion, and we'll try to keep this presentation brief to the most essential elements of the program for you. Go ahead, please. All right, so I want to share with you, of course, about the Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity. That's why we're here. And I want to share with you why the program is here. The program was founded in the belief that the life-limiting disparities in health and healthcare that exist within and between every country in the world can be mitigated. That things are this way, but they don't have to be this way. And the change that we're looking for, it can really only be accomplished by people. Determined people with the appropriate training located in strategic sectors all around the world. Next slide, please. Our mission is to develop global leaders who understand the foundations of health and equity and have the knowledge, skills, and importantly, the courage to build more equitable organizations and communities. Briefly, the program, as you may have heard or seen on our website, is a one-year experience. It's a non-residential fellowship program, which means that we expect fellows who successfully apply to the program to stay in their home, wherever that may be, at their organization, and come and spend time with us at George Washington University for our initial programming. We have in-person meetings at the beginning, middle, and end of the year. That first meeting is at George Washington where we start. Our mid-year session is traditionally in Rwanda, and our final convening has been rotating at different locations around the world, most recently in New Zealand. Between these meetings is online learning, and that is offered twice a month. We come together to learn and share and grow in our lessons on health, equity, and leadership. The fellowship also offers mentoring and coaching to fellows throughout that year. It's open to early to mid-career leaders who are involved in health-related work. And this may sound a bit vague. It is deliberately broadly defined because to make a difference on health, we need more than people who are involved in healthcare. We welcome healthcare professionals like doctors and nurses, but also many other professions. And you hopefully will have a chance to review our fellows in our website directory. And that includes an incredible breadth of experience, including fellows with expertise in arts, economics, technology, data, business. We need all of those skills to bring better health to the communities that we care about. And so we welcome leaders who are involved in work related to health, broadly speaking. The fellowship accepts 15 fellows from any country in the world every year. Our traditional name was US and Global, and we used to accept half of our fellows from the United States and the other half from other countries. And that was the intent of the founder, that we would create outward-facing US leaders as part of the program. We continue to have a number of leaders who come from the United States, but we also have many more now in our cohorts who are coming from other countries. Go ahead to the next slide, please. I want to say a word about our program values. These are really at the center of our work as a fellowship program and community, and they really have been from the start. Those many different professions and perspectives that I mentioned, values are how we bring people together across the many different disciplines, countries, and perspectives that are in the Atlantic Fellows Network. I also feel that at this moment in time, especially at our institutional home in Washington, it deserves mention that a lot of these words have come to many to have some negative connotations. And certainly not all equity-related programs have led to positive impacts and change. Some of these concepts, like diversity and equity, have become controversial. And I think the way that we live these values can and should be hotly debated. As a program, I want to be really clear about what we care about and what these values mean to us. At the Atlantic Fellows, we care about helping people live full, healthy lives. And living these values, as we have from the early days, is not a code for a political perspective or ideology. With faculty, staff, and fellows from over 30 countries, there's no way that we could adhere to a single political perspective or agenda, nor should we. I want to be clear, as a founder, what these values mean to me. I feel a tremendous responsibility for this program, and I founded it because, as a physician, I was and am tired of watching people suffer and die when I know that that suffering was preventable, that it was avoidable. And I'm not talking about one or two patients, but the patterns of suffering that we see that scream for attention that something else is happening beyond personal tragedy. And I am not here to advance an ideology beyond the belief that all human life has value and deserves dignity and respect. And I think if you truly believe that, then words are not enough. And that belief compels action to preserve the dignity and respect that people deserve in every part of our world. And that's what health equity work means to me. This work is incredibly complex and challenging, so we need all perspectives in the room to get it done. And that's diversity. There's no favored groups in the fellowship. There are no quotas for race, ethnicity, gender, and there never have been. To us, diversity is about inviting the full breadth of human potential into the room for these most important conversations about how to preserve and respect the most basic right, the right to live. And to realize the benefits of diversity, we need people who care about solutions and action more than ego. We need people who are willing to listen as much as they want to talk and recognize that they might not have all the answers. That's humility, courage, and an action orientation. And they need to be willing to experiment and try new things and to be able to envision something better. That's creativity. And we hope that there are many people who share these values on the call today. And with that, I'll hand it over to our incredible program director, Salam. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Next slide, please. I'll review the fellowship timeline. This is a brief overview of the timeline. We follow a calendar year. As Gwen mentioned earlier, we meet 3 times in person with online learnings in between. The program kicks off with a 2 weeks convening, initial convening in January 2026. Midway through the year in June, we gather for a 1 week convening. And then the program concludes with a final convening and graduation in November. And online learning really keeps fellows engaged and connected between convenings. And I'll speak a bit more about each of these elements in the coming slides. This is another way to really look at and understand the fellowship year. The fellowship year is structured around 3 in-person convenings I mentioned at the beginning, middle, and end of the year, each with its own distinct objectives and goals. Online learning occurs every 2 weeks on Zoom, reinforcing and expanding on the concepts introduced during these convenings. Most of the online learning is really self-directed, meaning it involves independent reading, watching videos, and doing a lot of personal reflections. Each fellow, as Gwen mentioned earlier, also receives individualized coaching and mentorship from faculty or senior fellows in our community throughout the fellowship year. Next slide, please. Convenings are foundational for the fellowship experience. Each convening blends classroom learning, which is introducing key theories, with experimental learning, applying concepts in real-world settings. So site visits and community engagements are essential to our learning, offering first-hand insights on how these concepts and ideas from the classroom take shape in our community. Fellows also have time for social activities and a lot of informal and formal networking, fostering deeper connection and collaboration with each other. Next slide, please. The initial convening marks the beginning of the year-long journey. Fellows come together for 2 weeks, and it's typically held here in Washington, D.C., at our home at George Washington University. And the objective of the convening is really to develop a shared knowledge and foundation concept in health equity and leadership for the cohort. Fellows engage in community site visits and interactive leadership sessions and discussions with health equity and policy leaders. This is the beginning of the year-long journey. So there's a lot of emphasis on relationship building and in order to develop cohort identity that is very important for the rest of the year. Next slide. The mid-year convening is a week-long program. The convening explores global health equity with a focus on low and middle-income countries. In the past, has taken place, as Gwen mentioned, at the University of Global Health Equity in Rwanda. And this is really an opportunity to focus instead of the US focus, as we do at the initial convening, now on the unique context and history of Rwanda. Rwanda's recent achievement in health really creates a very powerful learning experience. So we spend a lot of time in learning and with community health workers in the community. Next slide, please. And the final convening will mark the end of the year-long fellowship training. The convening really emphasizes self-reflection of the year and each fellow's personal and professional growth. A defining element of this convening is the final presentation, and we call them equity talks. I encourage you to visit our website and take a look at some of these videos because, one, the videos are very inspiring, and it will really give you some insight on what the fellows have experienced in the fellowship year, as well as ideas on some of their projects, because I know we get lots of questions about projects. So watch those videos. It will really give you ideas about some of those projects. At this convening, we also include skill building workshop for long-term success. But that's not the end. After the graduation, we celebrate the fellows, and after the graduation, our fellows also become senior fellows, what we now call global fellows. And the idea is that they enter a new phase of the fellowship. So after the year-long experience, they become lifelong fellows, meaning that they continue to support one another and join this bigger community. And we have over 1,000 lifelong fellows in our bigger community. And as a program, what we do is we support this community by organizing senior fellow events and fostering connection and collaboration. For example, we've organized events for our senior fellows, thematic events on refugee health in Greece, and brought together fellows working in this space for greater learning and collaboration. We've also had some on community health. In addition, we also organized larger community building convenings where we invite the bigger fellowship community to come together to really renew and connect with each other and shape their commitment to their work. And something important to highlight here is we are also one of 7 interconnected Atlantic Fellows program. These 7 programs are distinct programs and are located in 7 different countries, all focused on equity. Some of these programs focus on health equity, others on social equity, economic equity, and racial equity. And the Atlantic Institute, I'm sure some of you have read online. It's based in Oxford at the Rhodes Trust, and that is the entity that coordinates the senior fellow community, as well as the coordination between our sister programs. And that's a bit about the journey. And next slide, and I will now go through the application process. And the application timeline. Next slide, please. Oops, sorry. I think we skipped the application timeline. I apologize. This is what the application timeline looks like for this year. So April 10 is when the application closes, and we will have review rounds throughout the summer. In May, the team will spend time conducting formal read of all applications. In June, we will have our first round of interviews. In July, we will have our second round of interviews. And in August, we should be sending out acceptance notifications to applicants. Next slide. The application consists of 5 parts. There is the statement of interest. This is a brief statement of no more than 500 words. You should explain why you want to be a fellow, of course, highlighting your strengths, unique qualities, and relevant work experience in health equity. The second part is your health equity project proposals, where we get so many questions about this. You're asked to describe one health equity project you aim to complete during the fellowship year. And the project should align with your current work. It's a key part of the learning experience for you. And fellows will receive coaching from our faculty on the projects throughout the year. And your project may evolve during the fellowship year, and that's okay. And we will address more questions during the Q&A about the project. We also ask for 2 letters of recommendation. One of these letters should be from someone in a direct supervisory role. And we also require an employer support form. This form really confirms your employer's commitment to protecting your time more than anything, to participate in online learning and convenings. And the form must be completed by a direct supervisor. And we'll share more also on this during the Q&A. And finally, we asked for an updated CV or resume. So these are the things the application requirements. And I will now, at this time, I think I will now turn to some of our senior fellows who have engaged in these experiences. We're grateful to have 2 of our senior fellows join us today to share their reflections. So first, we'll be hearing from Samuel Akufo. He graduated just this past November 2024, so he's really well positioned to reflect on the experience. Welcome, Samuel.
Thank you, Salam, and thanks for the opportunity to share my experience. So, hello everyone. My name is Samuel Akufu, and I'm a pharmacist from Ghana, West Africa, and I was on the 2024 cohort, the best cohort. I'm happy to share my experience with you. I'd say I've spent the last 6 years working across Africa in the area of health equity, leading teams to operationalize a very novel drone delivery technology that creates access for healthcare commodities. And we've been doing this to serve hard-to-reach communities in mountainous areas and communities that have access barriers to access. And I'd say I've enjoyed the work immensely. I first found this fellowship in 2022. Although I was late to apply, I subscribed to their emails to stay informed. And then I read through the requirements. I realized the program required full commitment, which is something that I know Salam and Gwen would stress on. And so I decided to wait till the next year, and I was lucky to go through the application. I'd say I started application early to give me time for introspection. So that's something that you should do. And then once you're ready, you put in your application. And I would say that it was a valuable opportunity for me to enhance a lot of skills, especially with leadership skills. I would say my interaction with post the fellowship and during the fellowship, my interaction with key stakeholders have really been enriched by a deeper understanding of how the different pillars of health system strengthening really work, like financing, workforce, supply chain, service delivery, and how it comes together to address what we call disparities. I would say that I'm able to effectively articulate the value proposition of my organization even much better. And when it comes to leadership as well, I'll say I was already managing teams at Zipline, but I gained a lot of valuable skills around how to be even more effective. I understood that leadership is basically about influencing others. It helped me focus more on building other leaders within the organization through effective delegation. I'd say the quality of my one-on-ones also improved. I became a better listener, and I proved that asking insightful questions. I also say while on the fellowship, I learned how to really map out my stakeholders and improve my messaging to the different stakeholders. And it helped me be able to also improve at co-producing with stakeholders and then being able to gain buy-in from them. I'll say that my project, I mean, Salam mentioned about the project and how it evolves. If I tell you about my initial project, it was very crazy. But once I got into the fellowship itself, my project evolved. I ended up working on a data project, which pushed me to collaborate with my colleagues to be able to analyze our drone delivery data and being able to use drone delivery data to pinpoint and gain insights into different delivery locations and how we can generate insights around specific healthcare commodities, drawing information around unmet needs in certain communities, and then how we can advocate or create an advocacy tool that we can be able to reach stakeholders to let them know how we can advocate for more supply of healthcare commodities into some of the specific areas. And I think it was a very good project that was able to bring a lot of other collaborators together, which is something that has given us an opportunity to even advocate for more for hard to reach communities. Talking about friendships and connections, I would say I built very strong connections here. The relationships we have here are incredibly strong. Just before we joined the call, I know that same group is going to find themselves again in Ethiopia to do something else. I know they always want an opportunity to bond, and that is just like that lifelong friendship that we have, because we always want to find an opportunity to find ourselves together, to talk, push each other. We were able to even work on an op-ed during our period together, which was really good because of a mini project that we did together. I'll say overall, this fellowship has changed my view of health systems. It pushed me away from what you call the status quo of viewing health systems from a narrow window into a much more deeper and wider view of health systems. because this fellowship, I would say, it emphasizes the concept that health is a complete state of physical, mental, emotional well-being. And so aside from healthcare itself, there are other social determinants like education, income, housing, food security, and social inclusion. And when all of them become a focus, it creates a path for breaking disparities, right? And that is something that I think was very valuable for me. It took me away from just healthcare into all these other spaces and how it all comes together to bridge inequities. I would say that finally, the diversity of the fellowships participants also really enriched the experience. And I think Gwen touched on that. Well, in our group, we had lawyers, we had researchers, I'm a pharmacist, we had doctors. It was a good mix. And so whenever there's a conversation, whenever one of my colleagues, Oduru, raises his hand, he's going to talk about something which is human rights linked. But he gives you a very strong context that allows you to link it to how we are bridging equity together. And when Jasmine is also giving her research background, you are really able to understand it from a researcher's point of view as well. And so, and when Mario also comes up with a concept, he's looking at cost effectiveness and the economic side of things, which gives you a different perspective. So for example, we had a conversation around how my organization is working, and Mario really grilled me on the economics and whether it is cost effective and all that. And that really gave me a different perspective when I came back to work to look at things differently. So I'd say that this is a great opportunity. You should definitely put in your application and it will be life-changing for you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Samuel. It's great to hear about your journey and your reflection. Appreciate what you shared with us. And we will now invite Senior Fellow Kate Doherty to share her reflections. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Doherty. I am a senior fellow from 2021, and I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the US. So my journey was a little bit different. I'm one of the fellows that Gwen was talking about that doesn't necessarily come from a health background. I found this fellowship because a boss of mine kind of handed it to me and said, "You have a really big international background. You should probably apply to this." And I was in a workforce development background in the technology sector. And so I was like, what does this health equity have to do with me? Well, it turns out quite a bit in the US. Health equity and workforce development, getting young professionals jobs are integrally linked. If you don't have a job in the US, you don't have access to a lot of healthcare. And so they're very, very linked. I'm also a specialist in trauma-informed care. And so those two things go together. And through this, I really found out just how much those things were linked and were able to weave a lot of my passions together and become much more of a health equity advocate and really figure out how all of these disparate parts of my life, a yoga teacher, a trauma-informed care, workforce development specialist, really came together. And I'm still in the process of weaving that journey together. But I think what I would really like to talk about, because Samuel did such a great job of talking about the fellowship itself, I think I'm really well positioned to talk about what happens a little bit after the fellowship year. And that is the senior fellowship experience, that lifelong fellow experience, and the camaraderie that comes with it. So being out of the fellowship a few years, those connections that I've made during my fellowship have lasted. I talk to the people that I met in the fellowship and the Salam, Gwen, Olivia, Tamara, who is part of this, more often than I talk to some people from my jobs, truthfully. Just this week, I was talking to two different fellows and planning projects with them because we just have random conversations and it comes up like, "Hey, I'm working on this project. Are you working on something?" And the collaborations come fairly naturally after that, because what's so unique about this fellowship compared to other ones is whenever I'm walking into a conversation, I know that they have shared values with me. So I'm able to enter that conversation at a base level, knowing that we have a shared language based on our fellowship. And that goes for folks who are in my cohort, but also I know that I could go and talk to Samuel and know that we have that shared understanding and that we can launch right into a collaboration and be on the same foot, even though today is our first time meeting over Zoom. And so that's a really unique and important feature of being a part of this community that I value so, so, so much, and has really been important. The emotional support has also been an important part that I don't think it's talked about enough surrounding this fellowship. I think that especially during this really hard time for a lot of folks with cuts in USAID, with the things happening in the US, we've just been a huge support system for each other, a great way to not just commiserate about a lot of things, but also brainstorm, talk about great ideas about how to move forward from that. And I've relied on my AFHE community more than any other community that I have been a part of within that. The other part is that I have been lucky enough to be part of the Atlantic Fellow community for a few years now, and had the opportunity to not only learn and grow from the Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity, but also from other Atlantic Fellows programs. And with that, I was a huge part of planning a words are hard sometimes, planning a retreat down in Mexico City that was specifically focused on queer issues for the global community. And so that was a really big and amazing opportunity and a learning experience for me that brought together fellows from all 7 communities into one space to talk about issues that the queer community is facing around the world. And so that was just such an amazing, beautiful experience that I will treasure forever. And really amazing things came out both for all 7 fellowships, but also for the global work that we're doing around that issue. So I think all of these things are just have changed my perspective on health equity, but also changed my life in a lot of ways. So I'm really grateful to be a part of this, and happy to answer any questions during the Q&A section. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kate. We're so grateful for your reflections. I want to pause and shift now to Olivia. Olivia is our current fellow lead and is the person behind that Atlantic Fellows email account answering all your questions. And she will be reviewing now our frequently asked questions.
Thanks so much, Salam, and thanks so much as well to our senior fellows for joining us to share your experiences. It's always so rewarding to hear that after the fellowship year and the success that continues on for each of our fellows. So as Salam mentioned, before we open up for Q&A, we want to share just some of our most frequently asked questions related to the application process and see if we can get ahead of some of those questions. So, who can write those letters of recommendation that Salam mentioned? So generally, we ask for professional references who are willing to be contacted in the final stage of the selection process and provide you a recommendation. At least one should be in a direct supervisory role, and this can be the person who also signs your employer support form. If you run your own organization, which is a frequently asked conundrum, you may have a member of your board of directors complete the employer support form and provide one of those letters of recommendation. So I mentioned the employer support form. What is that? Is also a frequent question. And what does it mean? It's a simple form that just confirms that if you are selected as a fellow, your employer will protect your time to participate in the fellowship program, including those in-person convenings we discussed, as well as the online learning sessions throughout the year. The form must be completed by someone in a direct supervisory role, and you, the applicant, must upload the completed form prior to submitting your application. If you run your own organization, a co-founder or other person with whom you work who can help guarantee your time will be protected can fill out that employer support form. Do you need to be currently employed to apply? The short answer to this is yes, because the fellowship really centers around applying health equity approaches in your current role and making an impact in the health equity field. You're not required to stay in that same position through the entirety of the fellowship. And we can get more into the specifics of that. I know there have been a lot of questions around this in the Q&A. And what if you run your own organization? This is perhaps our most frequently asked question. As we mentioned, you may have a member of your board of directors complete the employer support form and one letter of recommendation. Your second letter of recommendation can come from a professional contact who's familiar with your work outside of your organization. All right, and with that, I will take us to the Q&A and pass it back to Gwen, who can open us up for it. Thanks so much.
All right, I think I'll start with one of the questions I've seen come through a few times now as I'm watching them appear, and it relates to the FAQ you just shared on being employed, is that a lot of people who work in equity have recently become unemployed or anticipate becoming unemployed. And that is the unique situation that we're in at this moment in history. And so just a word on that. As Olivia mentioned, the reason that we have this requirement for people to be employed is so that the fellowship is as impactful as it can be. We've all been a part of different learning opportunities where you sit in a classroom and you receive information, and often what you retain from that is much more limited than if you're learning about something, using that knowledge, using those skills, and then reflecting on that practice. That's what we invite you to do in the fellowship. So the design of the fellowship is, as I mentioned, an orientation toward action. So we hope that you will not only engage in the classroom, but also in site visits and other opportunities for active and applied learning. And the expectation throughout the year is that you take the lessons of the program, put them into practice, trying to improve health on the ground for your community, your organization, wherever you are, and whatever that means in your context. Reflect on that opportunity, on those practices, and try to do better in the future on the next project and the next opportunity and the next job and the next program, so that we're really making a difference and we continue to build on the progress. And so the requirement to be employed is really about active and applied learning. And so because there are so many people in this unique situation, I think I would still invite those who have been recently impacted by some of the cuts to apply. Please share with us what you have done in your recent role and also what you would like to do over the fellowship year. So acknowledging that the fellowship starts in 2026 for this cycle, think about where you envision taking your career next. And hopefully you're able to identify a real opportunity where you will be able to put the lessons of the fellowship into practice. And then as we go through, Salam shared some of the timeline. It's a rather lengthy timeline. We'll be looking for updates and checking in with individuals in their video interviews and in live interviews about how your progress is and in what direction you would be taking the work during the fellowship year. So that's the guidance that I would offer at this very unique period of time. What other questions should we answer, Olivia, Beth?
I think there was a question about funding that has come up about travel expenses and childcare costs while traveling. In terms of travel expenses for convenings, from booking your flights, hotels, or a stipend for meals, ground transportation for fellows, that's all provided and covered by the program. Childcare cost is not something that we provide, but we do support with navigating flights. If someone has an infant child that they want to bring to Washington, D.C., but we help with like the navigation process and giving recommendation. But in terms of cost, those are not costs that are covered by the program. I don't know if there are other questions, Olivia, that
I saw one about degree requirements, and I just wanted to be really clear that there are no specific degree requirements for the fellowship. You don't need a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or any other degree. And we're very proud of that because what we're looking for are incredible individuals who share those values, as I mentioned, who are willing to put in the time and the effort that this challenging work requires. And so we value your experience, we value your achievements, we value your degrees if you have them, but they're certainly not required.
I saw a question that I think Sammy and I can answer about preparing for the interviews. So there's 2 interviews. One of them is a taped interview. And then if you go to the next round, then it's a live interview. And so to prepare for those, just like really going back to what I did to prepare for that was really just thinking through my core values, because we're really trying to get to know you as a person during those, and to understand why you want to be a part of the fellowship, and a little bit more about your project. And so reviewing those things of why you would like to be a part of this.
Okay. Um, I'll just say that before you go into the interviews, do an introspection. Think about, I know you would have already applied, but you'll do a further introspection to want to understand why am I doing this? What really am I going to learn from this? Because it's a huge commitment, 1 year full-time commitment. And you're going to learn a lot, right? So you need to really have an introspection as to how it's going to fit within your plan, and be yourself, be genuine. Um, just, you don't need to act, just be yourself, be genuine, go with everything that you have and believe. And also finally, the fellowship is not just about health equity, but it's also about health equity and leadership, right? So go into the interview and showcase how your leadership journey has been, and how you are really going to benefit as a leader, because we want to build leaders that are brave, are courageous, would in the next few years be able to make very huge decisions, advocate for 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 people to have a better life. And so we are building leaders. So prepare, showcase how your leadership skills is really going to make an influence, how you're going to connect leadership to health equity. I think you should be fine.
I think there have been a number of questions about PhD students specifically. So just a note on whether or not students can apply to the fellowship. I'll just say that historically we have had PhD students who have joined the fellowship. But the important part there, as I mentioned earlier, is that the PhD student is also doing some work in the field. So being a full-time student, by itself doesn't include or exclude you, but if you're a full-time student, we hope that you also have an area of active work that you can use to apply the lessons from the fellowship. So that's the really important feature to note there. And I think there's a lot of questions about the proposals. Do you want to speak to that, Samuel?
Yes. So that proposal is really important, because as Gwen or Salam mentioned earlier on, it's meant to be as practical as possible. And you're not going to go through the fellowship year learning just theories, right? And that's why it's important that you still work in your organization, or it's like you can still be able to apply some of the things that you're learning in your work. And so I would say that definitely there's a challenge that you have within your role, or the work that you're doing, or the health equity work that you're doing. It's a challenge you've identified. Now, how do you bring that challenge to bear, and what are some of the skills that you would need to solve that problem? So you can think about it from that perspective. And then I trust me, some of the skills that you learn along leadership and on health equity modules would really be able to help you link it to the proposal itself. It's going to be an equity project where you are looking to solve a particular problem, but view it as an opportunity to practicalize what you'd learn in the fellowship, right? And so position it in that way. Look at within your organization, or within yourself, or even around you, if there's a challenge that you've been trying to solve, or there's a problem you've been trying to fix, a health equity problem you're trying to fix, and then outline it clearly, stating exactly what you want to achieve at the end of the fellowship. And even during the fellowship as well, you have the opportunity to adjust it. You have the opportunity to refine it and even make it better, because of course you will learn new things around how to address some of these issues. So I think that's what I would say. I'm sure Kate might have a few more things to add.
Yes, I mean, my project that I started with and proposed completely fell apart because it was during COVID. So but then the team was really helpful in helping me create a new project that was even more successful based around health equity principles and the leadership principles that we found. But I think when you're thinking about a project to propose, thinking about, again, it's also an opportunity to showcase something that you care really deeply about. And that is going to be something that is practical and on the ground, and a health need and concern in your area, and is not necessarily research focused. It's helping people who are on the ground in your community.
And I think there's a lot of questions about time commitment for being a fellow, both for online learning and convening. For the online learning curriculum, the commitment is between 12 to 16 hours per month. And that includes, the time you take to review readings, watch videos, and complete assignments. And then the online learning, the actual online learning class every 2 weeks, that's a 2-hour long class. But that's included in that 12 to 16-hour commitment a month.
And can I just add, like, you really get what you put into it. And so it is 100% like if it's like any online learning class. So it is possible to skate by. And there were definitely some weeks where you have a big workload and but then it's really what you put into it in those weeks that I had a big workload and couldn't do the readings ahead of time. I noticed that I did not get the same level of commitment out of it, the same level of engagement from everyone. And so when you are putting in that time to do the readings, to do all of the work ahead of time, it is much more fulfilling.
I think there's a question on collaboration culture amongst the cohort. I think it's one of the most collaborative groups I've ever been part of. It's not a very big group, but trust me, you would have the opportunity to work with almost every single fellow, be it through breakout sessions, be it through mini projects, or even through field site visits where we engage stakeholders out on the field and conversations come up and we learn a lot from each other. So it's a very collaborative cohort, and you'd realize that there'll be so much that you'll be learning from other cohorts, other fellows, because of course you're not a repository of all knowledge. You've done a lot in your career, but you will definitely not know everything, and you learn new things from new people. They will also get to learn from you, and I think that's what builds the community. Right from beginning, from DC, you would be one community with a list of things that you want to work together as a community, and so that community mindset is something that would run through the whole period and even post the period, because there are still fellows that I'm still very close with that we talk almost every now and then. And so that collaborative culture is definitely going to be there.
I can give a quick anecdote about this. Last week we had a community call that was for current cohorts, the current cohort and senior cohorts, about just everything that's going on. And to one of the current cohort members, I mentioned that I had a research project that she might be interested in being a part of. She immediately accepted, filled out the survey, and then sent it to some of her people that she worked with. And I haven't been able to get people at my university to fill out the survey. And so that's the kind of collaboration spirit that exists amongst this group of people, is just like always willing to show up and help you out at the drop of a hat.
I'm trying to furiously type answers to other questions. Do you want to flag some common themes for us, Olivia, Beth?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions about how many people apply, how many people are accepted, and just kind of, how to make yourself stand out.
Sure. That's a tough one. We usually get 300 to 400 or so applications for those 15 spots. So it is a good number of applications. I would say my number one, and I really hope that people hear this, is not to use AI. Don't use AI. If you want to stand out, AI is 100% guaranteed to make your application sound like so many others. And we saw this last year for the first time, and it was astounding. I forget which of our senior fellows mentioned, but we're looking to understand you. We're looking to learn about you and what you care about and what drives you, as I mentioned, because we're interested not only in the project that you're doing now, right, but the project that will come after that and into the future in what is envisioned to be a lifelong fellowship experience. And so as soon as you feed AI your information and it feeds it back, it becomes something that sounds like so many others, and we lose that element of your unique voice and your unique characteristics. So please, please, please I understand, especially with English not being the native language for so many people, that it's a struggle. So if you're going to use AI, I understand if you have to, but please edit very, very heavily and make sure that you hear your own voice in whatever application materials you submit.
Of course, questions about the health equity project proposal and specifically about what a measurable goal would be for the proposal.
You gonna do that one, Salon?
I was going to ask the question about the independent entrepreneurs and LLC business. I was going to answer that question. That comes up a lot. If you own your own consulting business or social enterprise, if you're the CEO, and you don't have a board of director, who should fill out my employer support form and write my letter of recommendation? And those situations, we ask that you reach out to a senior member of your team at the organization to complete that form for you and write letter of recommendations. Gwen, do you want to answer the project proposal one?
Sure. So as part of your application, you'll be asked to identify a measurable goal. And I'll just say that we get a range of different projects, some that are incredibly narrow and others that are very, very ambitious. That would take, 50 years and a team of legions and legions of people to help with. And honestly, they're all welcomed. What we're reading for is to understand how you approach problems, right? How you consider some of the challenges, what you consider your priorities. The goal is really supposed to be to consider what you will be able to accomplish in a year-long fellowship experience. But that said, I think, we are looking for proposals that are ambitious. We get many people who apply, and the project proposal sounds very much like their description of their existing responsibilities. And what we're looking for, of course, is to understand how the fellowship will help you do your work better, right? How it will take your work to that next level. And so help us understand not only what you're doing now and why it's important and why it matters, but help us understand how the fellowship connects to these goals that you have and how the fellowship will elevate the work and advance it further beyond what you're already doing. So that's what I would comment on that. And then some questions about mentorship are emerging. So I can just say a word and then I'll invite you to share your experiences, Samuel and Kate. We have adjusted our approach to mentorship over the years in order to respond to fellows' feedback and experience. And basically, we try to make it as responsive to your needs as possible. So every fellow receives coaching that's largely oriented towards leadership development and working on your project and some of the challenges that arise over the course of the year. In addition, we have mentorship that focuses on content expertise. So if you say that you need someone who really knows supply chain logistics or whatever other, content area you need support on, then we'll reach out to our network of faculty and fellows to find someone with whom you can connect. And we call it a micro-mentoring approach. Is basically the expectation is that you'll have 1 or 2 sessions with that person to kind of get a sense for whether or not it's a really good fit and whether or not it's meeting the needs that you have. And then if the relationship continues, you hit it off, you're welcome to continue the conversations. And if not, we'll also seek additional mentors in our networks so that you can get the needs met for your project and your program and community.
I would also say that there's a lot of informal mentoring that happens within the fellowship that has been really beneficial, especially from a lot of the, I don't want to say older senior fellows, but senior fellows from previous classes that just kind of take you under their wing without meaning to sometimes when you get to meet them on various calls or at convenings in different ways, that I have learned a lot from them, both for personally and professionally.
We got a question for Kate in particular. You talked about how your project proposal changed, but can you actually discuss what your project proposal was and how you
Yeah.
look back on it years later?
Yeah, so my project proposal was originally I was working in Camden, New Jersey. For anyone in the US, Camden is located right across the river from Philadelphia. And since I was working in trauma-informed practices and right after everything that happened in 2020, I was hoping to work with the Camden City Police and a group of young people that I was working with to work together and form a trauma-informed curriculum for the police in Camden to try to improve some of the policing practices. And right when my proposal, like right when I was supposed to start working on my proposal, the leadership at the Camden City Police changed over and lost all of my connections that I had there that had agreed to work with me. And so that kind of all fell apart and they changed a lot of their priorities. And so that was unfortunate. We still got some trainings done there, but we weren't able to work as closely with them as we had wanted to as I had wanted to in my organization that I was a part of called HopeWorks had wanted to. It was a very ambitious project. So when Gwen was saying that this is a project that could take 50 years and 50 people, I was 100% one of those people in my original application. And so I pivoted and definitely expanded my role within my organization and took on my organization was looking for someone to start to expand from just being in Camden to expanding into Philadelphia and Newark, New Jersey. And so I took on that role and so really started to plant seeds in those two places and form community partnerships. And so that was the project that I ended up taking on and really embracing the leadership challenges through in that way. And that was a really beneficial project, but a complete pivot from my original project. But I was able to apply the same leadership goals and objectives and look at the health equity and really take all of those things to heart in the same ways.
Got a
Well-
question about types of activities that take place during convenings as we just finished our initial convening. We can talk about what happened there. I know Sammy and Kate, you were part of it, part of your convenings.
Yeah, a lot happens at the convenience. I think, yes, so there'll be different speakers from different backgrounds, people who are also potential mentors, people that you can aspire to work with, or people that you get to learn from. I actually got inspiration for my own project, the adjustment to my project from the convening, because there was a senior fellow that came to make a presentation. So you'd have senior fellows, you'd have experts from different fields coming into convenings to present. You'd have site visits. You'd visit certain locations and have conversations with certain key stakeholders to give you a broader sense of what some of the equity challenges are on the ground. And yes, you'd also have sessions where networking dinners where you get to meet senior fellows, you get to meet other people. I actually met people at some of the dinners that we had who up till now I still have a connection with. They actually invite me on other platforms to even speak on equity and other things. So that's what happens. A lot of fun as well. You get to have fun and bond with your fellows, your colleagues as well. So I think that's what happens. So it's a mixture of learning and fun, but very balanced.
I think I see some questions about research, which always comes up. And so I just wanted to respond to some of those. Hopefully you've gotten a sense from hearing from our senior fellows about the different types of project that they've engaged in. And we encourage you to look at the equity talks for even more examples as the fellows talk about their projects in the videos. I'd say that, Samuel mentioned one of his colleagues, Jasmine, who is a researcher and an incredible part of our community. There's many researchers in the community, and it's certainly a skill set that's really valuable in this work. We need to use the best evidence possible to get some positive change. Nonetheless, I just wanted to highlight that for the project proposal specifically, for any researchers on the line, I would encourage you to think about how you will apply and implement the research, how you will work with communities to inform, to design the research. So a research proposal in and of itself is permissible, but we want you to stretch. The research alone is not the beginning and the end, right? Consider how you engage people in defining those questions and determining what's important, how you share the knowledge and what you do with it. Those would be the provocations I offer for our researchers on the line.
We, excuse me, got some questions about the type of topics covered during the fellowship year as part of the online classroom work.
Sure, I can answer that. So for our online learning, topics range from maternal child health to systems thinking to leadership principles. So, the topics alternate between health equity topics and leadership topics every 2 weeks. And we use the lifespan of an individual to cover from child all the way to adult. And we also have, skill-based trainings on data, and systems thinking and so forth. So those are some of the topics for the online learning. We have the leadership curriculum that covers topics about like team and organizing and developing your aim statement, and the leadership curriculum also really, the topics of the curriculum is really to help you also with your project, and you're able to go and apply some of the skills you learned in those sessions to your project. So, and I will also drop a page in there to share about more on this.
I see there's been some questions about living in one country and having work that's primarily based in another country or overseas projects. That's very common. We see that often, not only in the applications, but in the fellowship community itself. I would say that, we see it as, we see, I think people who are working in one country and living in another know that it's easier to be co-located, but sometimes that's just really not possible or realistic for a number of different reasons, and we understand that. So that's completely appropriate. We have a fellow right now in the program who's in that exact situation. So feel free to go ahead and apply.
What about if you have applied in the past? So there's a question about reusing similar letters of recommendation, but I think just generally answering sort of, do we accept fellows that have applied before and how they should structure their application?
Sure. So we do have a number of fellows who have successfully applied after 3 rounds of applying and not being accepted. So definitely, I think we respect and admire that persistence. And I think that, is a boon to the application, not a detractor. But I would just certainly highlight that you have applied before, because it will come up through the review. And if you don't highlight it, then we sometimes question why. And we'd like to look at your past application and see how things have evolved in terms of your thinking and your project. And certainly just an encouragement that we have a number of fellows who have applied a number of times before they finally were accepted into the program. And sometimes it's just a matter of the pool of applications in that year. It's always highly competitive, as I mentioned, in terms of just the sheer number that we receive. But also when we get to kind of the final mix, it's really, really, really tough to make these decisions. And so please consider applying even if you've not had success in the past. All right, do you want to take the next couple, Salam, on educational requirements and being supported in advancing your education, and then visas?
Sure. I'll start with the visa one, since that one is an easy one. And in terms of visa support, we would be able to write you a letter of invitation. For example, for the US visa, I know there's a lot of questions on that, a letter of invitation from the fellowship from George Washington University that you can use to apply for a visa at US embassies. And in addition, if you have a unique situation and you need more help, we also have an immigration lawyer that kind of supports with navigating some of those questions on the application form and so forth. But we don't have any kind of direct connection with U.S. embassies. A lot of people think we can just email U.S. embassy and make things happen. In fact, when we email, it's always not good. It's better, you know, for you to just engage with the U.S. embassy. But we're able to give you as much supporting documentation as possible and help you answer the questions on the application through the immigration lawyer as strong as possible, so that you are set for success. So that's that. And the other question is, while there are no educational requirements to apply, are fellows connected or supported through the process of advancing their education if they want to? Yes, I mean, we don't support formally, but informally, you know, a lot of our fellows who go through our projects, actually, our fellowship, actually, after they finish the fellowship, go to do their PhD or their master's degree. And the ways that we support is, you know, I know we write lots of letter of recommendation for grad school. Your mentors, some people have mentors who are working at different institutions that guide them about, okay, you know, what is the next career path? Where do you want to take yourself from here? You know, just talking through those elements and getting mentorship around, if that's your focus, is to advance your, you know, go get an advanced degree, is like really talking to your mentor about it, if that's a priority. And you know, you can always ask members of our team or your senior fellows or mentors for a letter of recommendation. So I think that is the way we would support in this area. Yeah.
I can take the question that Beth mentioned. As executive leadership of the program, are there health equity topics that are close to your hearts that you find uniquely interesting and that you would love to see more work happen? And I think it's a great question. I appreciate it. And I think the short answer, well, there's never a short answer. You've heard me go on and on. I really care about this, so it's hard to be short. But the short answer is no. I think, you know, one of the great joys of this work is not only meeting incredible people like Kate and Sammy, but also being in this setting of continuous learning. Honestly, every single fellowship session, every convening, I myself am learning and growing. And so I know more about all the things I didn't know than 8 years ago when we started. And so I appreciate learning about new areas of equity that I didn't previously consider. And I'd say those are some of the applications that I enjoy tremendously. So if I have, you know, my pet issues that I care deeply about, honestly, I would be hesitant to share them because I really appreciate learning about all the other areas that you all have been working on and that you share with us in your applications. This is one of our most exciting times of the year, because especially for those who have mentioned, you know, some of the job cuts and a lot of the drastic changes that have been happening, this process for us is receiving hundreds of essays around the world of great people doing amazing work, examples of perseverance, resilience, and I mean, it's really incredible. So please share what you're working on and don't try to aim for what we're interested in. I don't know if you would add anything to that, Salam. Other questions?
Gotten a lot of questions about funding, which you've responded that we do not provide funding for the project proposal, but one specific question was about helping fellows develop funding skills. Is that part of the fellowship?
That's great. And thanks. I do want to reiterate that because I think often, because we're based at an academic institution, there's a perception that this is a scholarship program or a degree program, and it is not. So this is a professional development program. We do not offer a degree. It's not a scholarship for a degree. It's not about being sponsored to study at the George Washington University. So that's important. We do offset all costs related to participation, so flight, visa, immunizations, whatever it is, those costs are covered. I think I missed a part of your question, Beth. Can you reiterate it?
About, do we help our fellows develop funding skills?
Yes, thank you. There's the other part. So funding skills, we typically do not emphasize fundraising skills within the fellowship year. so to speak. With that said, there is a lot of emphasis on getting very clear about your project, your goals, your aims, developing compelling narratives to motivate the people that you work with, which can also be really, really powerful tools for connecting with prospective funders. In the senior fellow year, as Salam mentioned, after graduation, we have tended to have more offerings about dedicated fundraising workshops. We're about to host a convening, as Samuel mentioned, in Ethiopia, and we'll have dedicated sessions on finding diverse sources of funding, which we had long planned, but are all the more relevant now that there's been a decrease in government funding, certainly in the US, but many other places as well. And so I think we're very interested in this topic, and we provide skills during the fellowship year and more emphasis in the senior fellow year. And I don't know if you guys would add anything. Kate, I saw you nodding.
I very distinctly remember the narrative and how much emphasis was placed on narrative and how helpful that was in then creating opportunities for funding. So not necessarily a way to go out and like cold call funders, but definitely when you are engaging with funders, it's very helpful to have those skills in your back pocket.
I'm seeing a lot of questions about stipend, and I think I've answered a few of them in the chat. I just wanted to share. So in terms of stipend, I think traditional fellowship programs give stipend like for living, right? Like for your home, that's what they do. Our fellowship program is, I think a lot of people are asking because of that, but we are a non-residential fellowship program. You are working and living in your home, and that we do provide a stipend, but the stipend we provide is for your convening attendance. So to cover your meals that are not covered as part of the convening, to cover like ground transportation from your home to the airport, to fly into, to go into a convening. So it's more related, it's a convening stipend. I wouldn't call it a fellowship stipend, it's a convening stipend. So any cost related to attending that convening that's not covered by the program, then this stipend will help you. And also there were questions about how much for that, and it's all different depending on where you're going and what's covered, what's not covered. So they're very different. It's very hard to say. So I just want to share that. And we also do provide support for those who don't have access to good internet stipends. So that's also something that we provide.
Other questions? Only 3 open questions. All right. Yes,
Fast on the typing.
go ahead.
I said fast on the typing.
Yes, briefly, I'll just say that for those who maybe have joined late, the session is being recorded. The recording will be posted for your review. So I know that's one of the questions that's out there. What other themes or comments, Beth, Olivia?
I like this question. Could the past fellows talk about any challenges that they faced during the duration of the program? And if applicable, how did the program support them throughout?
I don't think I had any particular challenge during the program, but I also knew clearly that if I did have a challenge, there were people that were always available to support. I also did know that there were other fellows that had their own challenges that would also reach out to me to provide support. So we support each other since we are in that group together. So there's a lot of support within the group. And I also know that the Atlantic Fellows for Health Equity also the fellowship itself is available to provide support. But I personally didn't have any challenge that I had to bring to the group. But I always knew that the group was available to support if I did have a challenge. Yeah.
I found the group very supportive. I'm happy to share. I'm severely dyslexic, and so once I applied, I shared that with the team, Gwen, Salam, Olivia, and they were very, very accommodating. And so one of the things that I asked for was for all of the information to be posted a little bit earlier so that I had more time to read it. And that's something that they've continued to do while I've been a senior fellow, so that I just have a little bit more time to scan any of the materials that I need, put them into my reading software. So that's just like one example of that the team's really willing to work with you on anything that you need, so that they can like really be on top of everything. I know that we also had during my year, some of my cohort was in dangerous areas. We had one fellow in Haiti that experienced some really insecurity, and we had one fellow in Sudan during part of that. And so I saw firsthand how supportive the fellowships were in making sure that not only like our fellows were safe, but also that like we knew as much as we could know going on, because we were worried about them as well. So I really appreciated how supportive and up to date they were on the situations going on with our fellows.
Great examples. Thank you guys for sharing that. I might answer this one that I just saw come through. Measures put in place by the selection team to ensure global participation and reduce selection bias. I think that's a great one. It's something that we take very seriously. And so we have now, the great fortune to have a great community of senior fellows that we lean on pretty heavily. And so all applications are reviewed by multiple reviewers, so that we're not having any one person's kind of perspective really color that application and how it's received and how it's read. And that selection committee includes, a number of different representatives from throughout the community, throughout the world. And so the applications are discussed and debated among this large group of individuals in an effort to reduce our biases in the selection process. And then we do look at the numbers every single cycle to see if there are any kind of disproportionate eliminations to different groups. And we break it by everything we can think of in terms of profession and geography. But as I mentioned, there's no like, we need this many doctors or this many nurses. We're really looking for outstanding individuals. And so we really depend on the selection committee to help guide us in that process. But we do look at the data also to make sure that we're approaching each application in an unbiased manner.
This is a hard question for Kate and Samuel. If you had to summarize what you got from the fellowship in one sentence, what would it be?
I think that the fellowship is too big to condense to a simple sentence. But I'd say a renewed approach to my leadership journey. That's what I'll say.
I was going to say something similar, continued commitment to health equity.
I think the last question, which I think Gwen, you covered a bit at the beginning, but if we are potentially constrained by use of language that is central to health equity, is it still possible to be successful if the actual project on the ground is devoid of that type of language, even if the goal is still to improve health outcomes for marginalized communities?
Yes, absolutely. That one actually does have a short answer. So I think what I hope to communicate earlier is that, we're not hung up on the language. We're not here for a slogan or carrying a banner. We really just care about making people healthier. So if your goal is to improve the health of your community, then, it's much less important that you're using any of the language that we use, frankly, or any of what's popular or unpopular now, depending on your perspective. So please just highlight what you're doing and don't get hung up on the language. I wish more people would do that. All right, we've answered at least 191 questions, and we're so thankful to the 300+ people that joined us for this webinar. I think as we're seeing the questions start to come to a close, we'll go ahead and move to close the session. And note again that it will be recorded and the recording will be made available for later review. Our entire staff, which is even more than the group that you see here, will be available for your questions that continue to come in by email as you begin to open the application and really start it in earnest. And so please reach out early with any of your questions or concerns. We're happy to provide those answers, and we look forward to reviewing your applications and hopefully seeing you in 2026. So thank you. Thank you all.